We're here today to discuss Edge AI in retail. Very exciting topic. I'm Greg Myers, Director of Edge Product Marketing at Lenovo, and I'm here today with my esteemed colleague from Intel, Oliver.
So, hi everybody. I'm Oliver Hood, and I'm a solution architect at Intel. And I've been working in and around the retail industry for about 15 years. And probably your world's top 10 retailers, you name it, I've been there and I've done it with them. And the stories and experience to tell is great to be able to bring it and share what I've learned so that people can understand just what Edge AI looks like and why it's coming to the edge.
Great, great. So, looking forward to the conversation. We're embarking on an incredibly dynamic and I would say exciting time for retail. Why don't we get started just kind of at a higher level? What observations are you seeing, Oliver, in retail these days as it applies to technology transformation?
I think we've seen a few different phases of transition in or technology in retail. The one constant thing is change, but the speed of that change only gets faster and faster and faster. If I look back at almost like a pre-COVID days where retailers would play with technology in various forms, if I go back 15 years, we were playing with what people call AI and computer vision. It wasn't at the time. We were calling it things like audience analytics. And then suddenly it was, ooh, there's all this data. What can we do with it? How do we get it, around the store? How do we get it into the cloud or other places? But suddenly COVID arrived and changed absolutely everything, right? Suddenly people needed to deploy technology for real reasons, right? Suddenly it was we couldn't interact with people face to face. It was how do I, lessen the friction of a transaction? How do I make sure my store can still operate? I can still make money, but all of their rules about trying to get stuff into store around trying it changed. They had to go out the window. Technology deployments that took 3 to 5 years before were now done in weeks, days, months. Post COVID, I think retailers have realized that technology change in store can bring advancement, can bring increased profits, increased customer satisfaction. So they've kind of changed their stance a little bit into, hey, this technology can do things. Now, if I put an AI lens onto it, pre-COVID, they were playing with it, seeing these, really complex, huge deployments that needed, kilowatts of GPUs, that needed kilowatts of power, refitting of stores. There was this keen interest in learning about it and developing it, but actually the realization that the cost of doing it was just impossible. As we advance, probably 5, 6 years, suddenly these platforms are changed, right? That cost of deployment has changed. And, the technology behind it, the AI models, all these pieces have changed so much that they're now really feasible. And you're seeing that, right? There's this sudden growth in things like the self-checkout, fraud loss at self-checkout, all these kind of personalized experiences in store. So there's various phases of change, but I think the biggest one is COVID changed retailers' attitude.
Yeah. COVID's been a big impact for many industries and customer user experiences. So I think you touched on a couple things. One, there's a journey that retail and retail technology has gone through. I think if I were to break it up into phases, I've observed certainly pre-COVID, but even earlier, say 2012, the AI specific technology that was in place was, as you say, mostly just simple computer vision, machine learning, almost simplistic movement detection within a store, within a retail footprint, noticing people walking into the store or leaving, noticing blobs of activity in certain aisles so that they could get a heat map and say, this aisle is very popular, that aisle is not popular. Yeah. But it's really then now more exciting, I think, since COVID and since certainly the models themselves have progressed to a point where we can move into really clear object detection, identifying specific SKUs, and with the right permissions and regulatory framework, the human being involved, especially if they have a loyalty program associated with that retail. We're moving into clear and very, very high fidelity object detection, which of course then you can do a bunch of analytics. And then even more recently, let's just say the last 2 years, behavior detection. What is the buyer shopper doing? What are their intentions? Where are they spending time? And then all that, wrapping back to a use case and ultimately, hopefully, a bigger basket purchase or more higher value goods.
Yeah, we saw some really interesting behavior doing RFID actually with that one, and kind of high value clothing retail where the loss was kind of happening in groups of people. And you could see it where they'd come in, they'd target particular garments that were wanted, that were high value, and you'd see them kind of move a garment slowly forwards in the store. So retailers would put them in the back because they didn't want to lose them, and then they'd come in groups of 3 or 4, and you'd see it. As you were saying, in the real-time data, you'd see them move an object in the store, move it to the front, and then someone would run in and grab it. But it's having the ability to take advantage of that data, right? Yes, I can see it. Yes, the models have gone from, gigaflops of compute needed to, small amounts that can be. Retailers have had to evolve to, know, right? Take alerts, process it at the edge and be fast enough to go move that jacket, that whatever, because otherwise it's gone, right? Yep. As it moves through the store, that takes minutes. For someone to just walk in the store and run out, it's 10 seconds. And more recently, we've seen lots of struggles around, the loss in stores going up, but also there's a lot of, let's say, friction around when people are challenged, when people are, realizing they've taken something. There's various staff are getting assaulted and other things that, you don't really want to be part of, that maybe for a lot of retailers, they just want to avoid that entirely. So the speed of taking action is another piece that retailers have really, even when we go back 10 years, right? Yes, we could tell them this data, we could show them all of these interactions, see people moving around stores, identifying product, as you say, the models have evolved, but it's having the retailers be able to, react fast enough at the edge. And that's still something that I think challenges retailers today, especially as we've been through patterns of stuff moving to the cloud, stuff moving to the edge. Yes, the cloud has its advantages. Yes, the edge has its advantages. And I think really they're developing this coexistence where there's this, latency, this response time you've got to have. Your critical things have to sit on the edge. And we've been learning a lot what these critical things are, right? Because you're not going to stop someone stealing a product when they're 5 minutes out the door.
Yeah.
So
I think you're touching on really key points of transitioning from reactive post interaction or post event analytics to real-time analytics and decision making. So being able to make a decision, make some sort of take action to either prevent loss or engage a customer more directly, more personally.
But it's at every level, right? It's not just the loss side, but it's processing the transactions, right? 10, 15 years ago, retailers were still batch processing card transactions overnight. There was no real time about it. The same for their stock levels and things. If you asked them for their inventory, they'd be like, well, I know it's in the store because I've got the log that says it was delivered, but I don't know if it's out the front, out the back, who knows?
Right.
And that same applies for loss. A lot of retailers have been on a journey over the past 5 years of learning where that loss is. And it's really, whether it's AI models, whether it's RFID, they've had to learn that, yes, some of it's going out the front door, but also probably some of it's going out the back door. And learning what problems they need to attack has been a big challenge that they've.
Well, let's take it one step further. So post-event, reaction to an event, something was stolen, 10 minutes, maybe even next day, you determine something was stolen. Now we're in real time. We can take action. What about moving forward in time with the AI capabilities coming in to actually do prediction and prevention before an action takes place?
Yeah, I think this is where you get into a lot of the capabilities that large language models bring, and being able to bring in other data sources around what are the patterns that have happened before, right? Could be that there's a sports event on, the coming week, right? And that team sports shirt is the one that's going to get stolen. So, maybe you want to have both more of them because that's when they're likely to be sold, but actually more in a space where it's under a camera or you've got somebody watching them. So it's a lot of bringing in that big data element that probably we talked about 10 years ago, and hopefully they are processing so that you can react to those data elements, because there's rarely one individual factor that will force sudden high loss, right? It's usually a group of circumstances together. The only exception piece I have seen in that is when it's let's say being self-caused, right? If an employee is doing something that they shouldn't, whether it's sweethearting their friends, whether it's taking stuff out the back door to make a bit of money on the side, those are the type of things where you'll see it as an individual trend in data, and then you've really got to think, well, what could cause that? And
Sure.
there's usually only one reason.
How about on that same line of thinking, sort of being predictive, but combining that with personalization, more on the customer transaction side. So you're hoping to enhance the customer experience, bringing in, hey, maybe you should add this to your shopping cart.
Yeah, I think one of the we're looking at something at the moment actually where we've kind of brought enough performance to the edge where you can bring kind of that digital online experience of cross-sell, upsell. That's been really successful for retailers. They've seen 30-40% uplift. Other customers bought this, or would you also like? As we've gone to our newer platforms, so things like Core Ultra Series 2, that extra AI performance from, our MPU, our integrated GPU, suddenly you can not just be kind of data gathering with regards to identifying products, but we're doing things like generating advertising, right? So looking at the content of your basket and perhaps looking at the inventory of a store and saying, well, hey, you've got oranges in your basket. How about you turn it into a smoothie, right? Yep. And as we've moved from Core Ultra Series 1 to Series 2, I can do it in sub 1 second rather than 5 seconds. And, you're back to that edge latency piece, right? It's no good showing someone an advert 5 seconds after they've walked past your sign. But, 1 second, well, actually, by the time you've seen stuff in a frame, they're probably about, mid viewpoint on the sign to do it. So the ability and that processing power to not just, identify that perhaps there's a person there, they've got a shopping basket. Actually, I can start showing them adverts that are relevant to their shopping basket. I can start upselling based on the inventory of the store, right? What do they need to sell? Really advanced stores, if they know what they need to sell with regards to sell-by dates, there's other, revenue opportunities that can perhaps minimize loss for retailers. That ability to react on the edge brings whole new business opportunities even for the retailers, right? You can sell that space, right? You can sell the upsell opportunity, sell it as a higher value space. And that crossover into digital media networks is something we're kind of exploring now, right? Digital media networks haven't proliferated yet, but they're, a big kind of interrupter in the digital signage market. How are they going to interact with retailers? That's a space that it's exciting to see it develop and kind of have technology be at the core of it.
That's excellent. I see the same as well. And you touched on some of the technology building blocks. You mentioned the Intel Core processor, Core Ultra. Maybe for the audience, we should build out the story for them in terms of what are those technical and technology building blocks that really develop a full solution for a retail outfit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of key services a store will always have, right? Everyone I speak to, both internally with Intel and when I speak to retailers and everybody across the industry, job number one for physical retail stores is you've got to be able to make money. You've got to be able to transact, right? So those payment services, the inventory services. Yes, there's always a component of the large retailer that's going to sit in a cloud in a data center, but also they've got to operate, severed from those things, right? Because job number one is making money, and some of the margins at these retailers not making money is a disaster. So, that's probably the biggest one. Consumer expectations have really changed. Things like buy online, pick up in store, seeing a stock in a store, that's kind of this mixed blessing because it can be brilliant. You can go and look up that, yes, they've got it in my store, but how many people kind of see that they've got one and then go to the store and realize they've got none? So there's been, over time, a lot of alignment to make that very good, because often there's been a, negative feedback because, they've seen there's one or two and then they can't find it. Yeah. So there's pluses and minuses, but inventory, payment, that's probably the biggest ones. Obviously, there's been a big swing with COVID, cash versus no cash. So payment processing. But I think the next big frontier is that personalization piece, right? And there's a lot of ethics around how much do you want to personalize, how much do you know about a person. Most people don't like it if you say walked in front of a sign and it went, "Hey, hi, Oliver. I know you like buying infinite amounts of steak, therefore I'm going to give you a deal on steak." It's like, yes, but maybe I don't want the rest of the store to be seeing that type of thing. So, there's definitely some ethical AI questions around it as well. What do I want to show people? And even when you talk about the upsell and the cross sell, what do I want to upsell, right? Do I want to be upselling them products that are bad for their health? So there's ethical pieces to this as well, not just the technology piece. Although
Sure.
obviously the technology piece is probably what I'm most interested in.
So yeah, let's talk about that. So you have Intel has introduced a few waves of generations of AI-enabled processors. Where are we today on the Intel processor landscape?
It became, I think, very obvious to the world, right? 5-6 years ago, around what AI was going to do, how it was going to revolutionize everything. Cloud to edge to data center to even your consumer laptops. We launched our Core Ultra Series 1s, which really brought what we termed AI accelerators, so NPU, GPU. That gave you the ability to process AI in ways that didn't affect the user experience. So if you're doing your Zoom calls or your Excel work, right, it wasn't hitting the pieces like the CPU that people are using every day. We've brought that into the edge so that you've got these edge devices with these accelerators, and we've iterated on them. We've got a really good track record as we've moved through Series 2, Series 3 of doubling performance for these accelerators, but also halving, quartering the power it takes to do. That if you took a unit of compute, we must be from that Core Ultra Series 1 to Series 3, something like the same unit of compute takes 25% less. 25% of the power to deliver the same unit of compute, but also in 25% of the time or less. And that really has opened up all of these experiences to a store, right? Suddenly it's not kilowatts of cooling, kilowatts of power cabling, and all these expensive costs that, retailers just rejected, right? They loved the technology, they loved what it could do, but it was getting it to a cost point that they could scale. And, I think, we've got with some of these new platforms the ability to do that, right? And that's a really exciting prospect.
Yeah. And you and I before the podcast were talking about the Core Ultra 2, and then even looking forward in time, maybe the 3, using those in our Lenovo ThinkEdge product line, which we're on generation 2 now. Very excited. This is where I think we really are becoming AI capable from an edge product perspective. So as we look at a retail future infrastructure deployment, these are the types of products that I think are going to be important. You need an edge device, Lenovo ThinkEdge product line Gen 2. You need a capable Intel compute engine, Ultra 2 and beyond as we move forward. But I think we should also touch on in the PC consumer and even in the commercial business space, we tend to think of PCs as standalone devices that once you buy it, you take it out of the box and you're off and running. In edge and vertical deployments, it's also it's the technology building blocks, but it's also partnering with solutions. So software, services. I know I'd love to hear your perspective. I know from Lenovo point of view, we recognized early on that retail especially, but other verticals like manufacturing, maritime, smart cities, these require ISV software partners. These require solution providers. We've built an OEM solution capability and team and organization that delivers this exquisitely, recognizing that each vertical has specific and unique needs. They need specific and unique partners to deliver the full solution. So what are you seeing in terms of solutions and software ecosystem out there today?
So I think the first thing I'd say is, retailers have always spoken retail. I've been on a journey for, as I said, a long time, 10, 15 years. When you go and talk to them, you have to speak retail, right? They're not interested in when I go and talk about tops or, hey, look what I can do on my GPU or
how many USB ports you have.
They want to know how the checkout is or how the ERP or the payment backend. So it's being able to seamlessly mix the, why, what does this technology enable with, how does it fit into that retail landscape? And ISVs are the key bridge to do that, right? Because they're the ones that translate the, hey, I need a checkout system into, well, that means a processor with these many USB ports so I can plug in a printer, so I can, take a card payment device and all those other things. So, ISVs are really that key bridge that when a retailer says, I want to buy a solution, the ISVs don't have the hardware, they don't have the capability to support it, to deploy it, to manage it. So you need that group together, but that comes as a solution, and you have to spend time, building that industry together for, unique industry approach, right? You can't, as much as I'd love to take a retail solution and sell it in other spaces, they're not usually, especially with things like maritime. I'm not sure going, hey, look at my point of sale is going to help a ship too much.
Unless you're on a Disney cruise.
Yes.
So we touched on ISVs. I think I know Intel has a very strong ISV partnership program. Lenovo does as well. We call it the Crosswave program. It's finding those ISVs relevant for that vertical, and then finding customers who have pain points that software provider can help solve along with our hardware, your hardware. I think that's really the key message in terms of how we further enable the industry here.
Yeah, but bringing it all together, and one of the pieces that's really important is the software. I know we speak about ISVs, but actually optimizing it, getting the optimum performance out of a platform. How do you make it, performance per watt? Have it so that it's using the best of our processor and delivering what retailers expect. That optimization piece happens because we cooperate, because Lenovo work together with Intel, because you've got things like Crosswave that you go and talk to these people who want to build a solution, and we bring it all together to each brings a different piece of expertise to the party, but the outcome is the best solutions to the industry.
Great. So maybe as we wrap up here, thoughts on the future. Maybe 1 or 2 minutes on where do you see maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? What's the experience for the customers in retail?
I think I'm going to start with the now, right? I think first of all, I'm really excited with the SE60. It brings a level of AI performance that, for me, as I've worked with the industry, I've been beaten around for a long time about, we need kind of this, and I don't want to talk in tops because not all tops are the same, but everybody thinks we need this 50 tops performance number for self-checkout for all these retail solutions, 50 tops. It's the first platform that for Intel brought it. And, for Lenovo, it's going to be the first platform that offers you that scale to go into the market and really hit retail and say, right, we've got this AI platform that I know you're hungry for. So I think that's probably the biggest thing where, we need big scale partners like Lenovo.
The Lenovo ThinkEdge SE60 Gen 2. Yes.
So that's probably the biggest one where, as Intel, we don't directly sell anything. We need our partners to be strong with us. And when our partners have good devices, we all do well. So I think that's the biggest one for me in the conversations I have with retailers, is to be able to say, hey, well, you can go and get these things, now, right? It's not me showing something that's in the future. It's today. I think in future, I hope that it becomes less of a performance question, right? We've been very much held back by, yes, the technology is great, but it's how do I implement it? It's all going to cost a lot of money, from store refits, all these other pieces. I'd love us to see us move into that more personalization space. How do we become, much more customer orientated, customer enjoyment orientated, the experience, make retail excited again. And that's kind of one of the pieces I'd love to see around, retail, is not just having people seeing retail or stores, physical stores, as this tax that, they can be great spaces to do things, and, let's get the excitement back so that we do that.
Great. Well, Oliver, thank you. This has been a great conversation. And with that, I think for our podcast audience, we'll conclude it here. So thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
That's a wrap.
Lenovo.